Welcome to Robotics and Automation News webinars, where you can be part of a global event without leaving your home or office. Attend our live webinars and communicate directly with influential professionals in your industry.
Hello, my name is Abdul Montakim. I'm editor of Robotics and Automation News.com. In this interview, I speak to Chris Raven, Chief Marketing Officer at Oro Inc., which is an e-commerce platform a bit like Magento and Shopify, with a key difference. That difference is that Oro specializes in providing a business-to-business e-commerce platform rather than a business-to-consumer one, as Chris will explain in the interview.
My name is Chris Raven, and I work for Oro, Oro Incorporated. We are a company based in LA, but I am the UK channel manager. So I have worked with Oro for more than 5 years, developing and supporting client relationships with the products that we sell, namely Oro CRM and Oro Commerce. And kind of for the last 18 months, I've been working closely with our sales, marketing, solution engineering team to kind of build and strengthen our relationships in the UK. We've signed up some pretty high quality solution integrators, some partners to develop solutions for clients. And yeah, we just really enjoy kind of guiding customers on their journey to business e-commerce transformation. My background is sort of 20 years or so in e-commerce and marketing and data, use of data in marketing. So I'm fairly well placed to match our products to clients and make sure that people's projects are kind of brought to fruition efficiently and with the right specs, because there's some complexity in what we do and lots of variation, as I'm sure in your audience's industry as well.
Okay, thank you. And tell us a bit about Oro itself as a company.
Yeah, so Oro was conceived about, I don't know, maybe 8 to 10 years ago by a group of individuals who got a sort of heritage in e-commerce, in B2C e-commerce, really, what we call direct-to-consumer or business-to-consumer commerce, where they're building websites and somebody's listing products and selling them direct to consumers to buy. And what they saw after they'd been on that B2C journey was that there was a real gap in the market for an e-commerce platform for businesses to sell to other businesses. And there's lots of nuances in that relationship, where you might need complex pricing environments or complex account management, permissioning, things like that. A whole roster, some of which we'll talk about, I'm sure, but a whole roster of differences between the kind of direct consumer approach and selling to other businesses. And what we've ended up with is a company with 150 plus employees, and we have 7 offices in 5 countries: US, Germany, Ukraine, Poland, France. We've got a massive global partner network. We're backed by a venture capital company called Highland Europe, and we have over 500,000 installs of our open source software around the world. And our premise is that we have created a business architecture platform, a set of code on top of a well-known and robust PHP infrastructure called Symfony. And people can take that business architecture platform and they can run with it and develop their own software and go and create other platforms, and other people have done that. And we have 2 products, Oro CRM and Oro Commerce, which comes together with Oro CRM if you choose the Commerce package. And we have an open source version of each of those. Open source is very key to our strategy. And we have an enterprise version of both of those. The open source is free to use. Anybody can download it. There's no license fees or anything like that. They can kind of download it, run with it, do what they need with it, customize it as they wish. And our enterprise version there's a license fee for that. It has extra functionality, improved kind of back-end functionality, and we kind of bundle it with a very premium hosting solution, cloud hosting solution. But at its core, we are a B2B commerce provider, SaaS provider. Okay, well, I think it's probably worth giving you an overview of how we're received in the industry. It's It's an interesting industry, the B2B e-commerce zone, because not many people who develop specifically for businesses to sell to other businesses online. There's lots of companies that create e-commerce platforms and SaaS platforms, and then weave a commerce proposition into that. But ours is really the only one that's built for B2B from the ground up. And people like Frost & Sullivan rate us as the #1 e-commerce platform. Gartner, Forrester, these IBI Research, these big companies who look at the entire market and look at what the companies are doing, what their vision, their strategy is, what their capability is to deliver against clients' requirements. They all rate us very highly, as you can see, and they recognise that we've sort of built this proposition that is a little bit unusual in the market and its capability. But I think it's worth talking about the open source ecosystem, and maybe some of your audience in robotics will be familiar with this concept of the code base being available to anybody and not locked down, not private. It's not a security concept, it's more of a customization potential. So it's looking at a code architecture that allows people to take a thing that's been built and completely make it their own or make it applicable for their requirements. And in the context of our software, that gives, #1, a really good ecosystem for people to contribute and people to build their own connectors to other platforms. It makes it super flexible. It makes it really innovative. People can do whatever they need with it. There's no restrictions. There's no constraints. And what it tends to do is lower the total cost of ownership, even in a licensed enterprise software context. There's a different thought process if you're developing on open source software, because it's usually a lot more convenient and a lot easier and a lot quicker to do. It's also, with our software, we're not talking about buying a core platform and then buying extra add-ons and bolt-ons to make other things work. So often there's a lower cost of ownership. This sort of says a similar theme, but with our approach at Oro, we layer in the fact that we've got a leadership team who've got a heritage in building e-commerce platforms. We have the most comprehensive set of out-of-the-box features, hands down, over any other platform. We have a system that is highly secure, and like I say, on a premium cloud-hosted environment, we can control. There's all sorts of different compliance levels, basically, in creating a secure transaction-related environment. So SSL certificates on all the sites, PCI compliance for ensuring that we don't store credit card details. Those are examples, but we have a roster of other versions of that. And really our differentiation points are that we have a combined CRM and B2B e-commerce platform. So, for example, if you're a company that manufactures robotics parts and you want to sell those parts to other businesses who are using them in their factories, you've got a solution that allows you to list and create product listings or customizable bundles of all those different parts and components that you might want to offer. It allows you to offer those for online consumption to your customers. It allows you to provide your customers with a transactional capability so they can buy directly online, or you can take them through an account clearance or a credit control or a quoting procedure. You can apply terms. You don't have to have everything transacted as if you were buying through a credit card mechanism, although that option is available. But crucially, you also have this embedded amount of data and understanding of how those customers are behaving and how they're consuming your products and how often they're buying and why they're, when they're coming back and what they're asking you about, and if they're raising support cases or asking about particular features, or if they're responding to certain email campaigns that you're sending out. You've got this very, very robust and comprehensive baked together proposition of the transactional side and the customer understanding and customer behavior side. That's unusual. Because of our open source approach and our simplicity in integrating into third-party applications with an API, we have a shorter time to market and therefore a lower total cost of ownership often, and therefore a lower, shorter time to return on your investment, because investing in a new e-commerce platform or an e-commerce platform, if you don't have one to start with, is often not a cheap proposition. But critically, we have this thing called a workflow engine. And I have a couple of slides to talk about on that towards the end, but essentially you can build automation into your processes. So if you've got a quoting process, for example, you might want to put steps in there that understand criteria and behavior and decisions. And if somebody makes an action, you can then apply an automation to take them down a route that makes sense for your process. So I can go into a little bit more detail on that, but we have a selection of customers across lots of different industries. You can see there some pretty large ones. You know, a couple that I will highlight are Fair Price and TruePar. I'll come on to those, but yeah, we've got a huge amount of a kind of global customer base. A lot of these are US, but a lot of them are not. A lot of them are global. A lot of them are French. A lot of them are UK. So you know, we have pretty strong examples in lots of different industries. If I can just highlight a few of those, Hyde Park are components and spare parts distributor. They switched from a very high profile e-commerce platform. They were looking to deliver something for their customized customers, which was much more customized, and they had multiple storefronts, multiple catalogs, multiple customer lists, lots of product data lists. They basically needed something to bring it all together, centralize it, maximize efficiency, and allow them to kind of scale better and sell more efficiently. So our commerce platform has a sort of native multi-website management capability, and that essentially solved all of their problems out of the box. They didn't have to bring any additional development or customization in. They were able to merge all their catalogs, their component catalogs, and they were able to use our configuration settings and localization to vary the products that they displayed within different storefronts for different geographies. So that's all sort of native functionality. I'm trying to contextualize perhaps what your audience might look for if they're looking to sell globally and sell different things to different people. And not a lot of B2B e-commerce platforms sort of understand that need for varying the sales between different countries. Another one that's useful to look at is Petra. Again, switched from Magento, a high-profile site. You can see a much larger, sort of 10x the revenue tier of the previous example. Still same timeline, 7 months to actually get it up and running. These guys had built a B2B proposition on a B2C focused website. So they were continually customizing and continually having to fix and firefight and patch to make sure that the website that they got met their functionality, met their needs. And it became very fragmented and kind of still lacked some of the essential things that they need, the features that they needed, like multiple pricing tiers and things like that. So we were able to, again, switch to Oro Commerce, solve a lot of their problems natively, and build their customizations for them to allow very, very in-depth product sorting, product autocomplete search. You know, when you type into a search bar and you're looking for a product on site, and the website itself recognizes what you're typing and suggests ideas of what you might be looking for. You know, in distribution, when you're running a £250 million distribution business, your product catalog is immense. So the need for very, very robust and rational product management and merchandising on the website from a kind of user experience perspective is absolutely critical. and that's very different in B2B than it is for B2C. Another spare parts supplier, TruePart, again covering sort of lots of different countries in North America and Canada and Mexico. These guys have 7.5 million SKUs, so 7.5 million different products that they list. And that's a very big ask of most e-commerce platforms. They also integrated multiple warehouses, and they customized the platform to allow those warehouses to synchronize real-time inventory with and pricing information with the central back end, if you like, of our platform. And that meant that they could essentially service their customers a lot better, because customers knew explicitly where things were in stock and what pricing they could get at the exact time of order. So yeah, you can see that they increased their average order value by 70%, and they increased online revenue by a quarter within the first 3 months. So these are sort of not outlying case studies. We have lots of customers that see this kind of success. One last one I'll just highlight is France Air. So they're in manufacturing and distribution. I think this is probably one of the most relevant ones for a company who are selling or manufacturing, like I say, robotics parts or electric vehicle parts, or your audience is quite broad, but there's anybody who's manufacturing anything tangible and needs to sell that to other people and install and supply components. The move or the transition or the transformation to an e-commerce scenario, an e-commerce kind of proposition is a big decision that needs to be handled correctly. And France Air are one of the bigger companies who needed to kind of go through that transition. But it was, for them, they weren't transitioning from nothing, they were transitioning from a very old, organically built legacy solution. And what they needed was something that was really up to date and would allow them to kind of scale and grow. Now, our proposition is what's called responsive from the outset. So when you look at it on a PC or a desktop screen, it looks great. And when you look at it on a mobile phone, it automatically resizes and makes everything look correct for a mobile phone or a tablet. So, often legacy built sites or custom built sites don't have that capability quite the same. And I think, with a manufacturer being able to offer things like a 24-hour personalized delivery option, if you're providing components that are critical to a producer factory being up and running all the time, having 24-hour delivery could be a deal breaker between somebody getting your supply of components and going to one of your competitors. So you can see why that would be really useful. They also have a bunch of stuff that allow them to personalize their catalogs for different customers and personalize content on site. So when customers log in, they see things that are really relevant to them. Actually, that's starting to become expected from a consumer perspective. If you log onto your favorite site, you're looking to buy something for Black Friday, or you're looking to buy something for Christmas, it's nice to be shown things that you haven't bought before, or that relate to something that you've bought before, or that makes sense to you because the business understands you a little bit better. And being able to replicate that experience to an extent in business to business is definitely an emerging trend and something that we can kind of live up to. So just to finish off, I just wanted to highlight a couple of workflows. So our workflow engine, it allows you to essentially build automation into your processes, either through a graphical user interface in the program or through code in the back end. And you can be as simple or as complex as you like here. But essentially, what this is showing you is, if you want to ensure that somebody goes through a quoting process, if your company is not in the position to create a product and sell that product as is out to the market, you may be in a position where you'll have a roster of products, but people need to combine different things or understand elements of it that need to be bespoke. And actually, you can't just straight sell, straight price for things. In that context, a request for quote would be very, very useful for you. You could essentially allow people to make contact through the site, ask for a quote. You could give them the opportunity to put lots of detail in about what they're looking for, and then you can either build a manual proposition from that, or you could even add complexity in to create an automated proposition, automated quote response from your catalog, and build it on the fly, depending on your capability and your coding complexity. But essentially, you can see that there's a number of steps that you can add there, and send people down different routes. The same thing might be elaborated with an approval step. So in this case, you might have some components that can be straight priced in sales. So if your customer comes through a request for quote, and they meet some criteria that means it doesn't need to be reviewed or doesn't need to have a more complex quoting process, then you could send that straight through to be sold. Or if it does meet the criteria to require more approval steps or more complex quoting, then you could send that down a different path. So essentially, I've given you two examples in a kind of RFQ context, but it's a lot more capable than that. You could imagine any functionality and build it in. But really, that's all I wanted to highlight from a straight up slide perspective. I don't know if you have any questions that pertain to anything specifically.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it's specific, but I wanted an overview more really to begin with, because it's a kind of a new subject to me. I know well-known CRMs. I know what e-commerce is, like most people, but I'll ask you a couple of things which will indicate the limitations of my understanding of what you're offering. A B2B e-commerce concept, that's something that I wanted to understand. You're saying that it's different from B2C, or rather you said earlier at the beginning. I was wondering if you could elaborate on that. What's the difference between a B2C, business to consumer website or platform, and B2B e-commerce platform? A B2C, what's an example of a B2C business to consumer platform? Is it like eBay or something like that? That would be, no, that's a website. I mean, a platform would be something like WooCommerce or I don't know, Magento. I don't know much about Magento, but there are B2C platforms, e-commerce platforms out there, aren't there?
Yeah, absolutely. So Magento is a good example. WooCommerce is a good example. Shopify is a good example. eBay, it kind of is, but it's more of a marketplace. Amazon and eBay are very much business to consumer retail, and they are very good at it in a lot of respects. But when you talk about platforms, yes, it's usually things like Magento or Shopify, where you are a vendor of products or services which you want to sell to the general public and consumers, and those platforms allow you to do that very, very quickly and easily in a lot of respects, especially something like Shopify. When you're selling in a business-to-business environment, that dynamic of I've got a kind of catalog of products to list, they all have one price, and the customer pays that price, and that's the price they see on the front end, and they kind of go in and they choose the products, add them to basket, pay by PayPal, pay by credit card, and then have them delivered to their home. That process in B2C is fairly commonplace. In B2B, there's a whole different set of dynamics within that process. So, you might have a company that sells to, I don't know, let's say 20 other businesses. 5 of those have pro forma accounts, and you need to show them X VAT prices, but there's no other discounts applied. Another 5 of them might be a higher value accounts, and they're in a tier of pricing that automatically gives them 10% discount on your standard price, your RRP or whatever. And then you might have another 10 accounts that are even higher value, and they get another 10% on top of those discounts that you've already assigned to other people. And actually 2 of those 10 accounts might be very special accounts where they buy so much of one product that you might want to give them a very specific, permanent discount on that one product if they buy it in a certain quantity, if they buy in bulk. So you can already see that within that construct, a B2C e-commerce platform that allows you to list a product for one price and sell it at that price on the website, that's not going to be applicable. That's not going to create the functionality that you need. So that's what we refer to when we're talking about multiple pricing tiers, really. It's the ability to present a storefront, perhaps to the general public, with your recommended retail price, inclusive of VAT if you're in the UK. If you then provide a login for trade accounts, people can come in and they can see the price ex VAT. If they log in and they meet the criteria for a certain level of discount, then they see those prices. Or if they click on a product and they have been given a discount to that product, they could see their bulk prices, for example. So if they buy 1 to 100, they get this price. 200 to 500, they get this price. Over 1,000, this price, etc., etc. So the complexity of that pricing model and allowing the system to configure it applicably to different customers, customer groups, different entities. That's one component of B2B e-commerce. Another critical part of that puzzle is being able to recognize that companies have lots of different stakeholders and lots of different premises, perhaps, and lots of different parts to their business. So if you're a consumer and you're going on a website to buy something, there's just one of you, you go on, you choose what you want, you buy it, you pay for it, it gets delivered to your home. A business might have a construct where their head office receives all of the invoices for everything that gets bought with that company, but they might have 10 different branches across the UK, and each branch is responsible for its own ordering of stock or of the products that you're selling to them. They might have 5 of those branches that have a manager who's authorized to place those orders. The other 5 branches might have a manager who's newer, or they might have only assistant managers who need approval from somebody at head office to place those orders. So you can see, I hope, that the complexity of that transactional relationship is kind of radically different in a business-to-business environment. So what we do in Oro is recognize that the company is the customer. And within that company, we are able to administrate different permissions to different people. So you could have those 10 branches, each with 10 different shopping lists, all on the go, all ready to take to different stages of approval or quoting or transaction or send for invoice or wherever they need to be. They might have one shopping list that has stuff they need tomorrow for urgent repairs on some customer's product. Or, if you think about it in the context of a car mechanic company like Quick Fit or something like that, they've got loads of branches. They're going to have very, very high throughput of consumables, of tires and brake pads and things like that. But they're also going to have the need for very rapid delivery of an exhaust if they run out of an exhaust for a particular car and they need it because customers come in and they need that one replaced. So what we're able to provide is that functionality where that company can have their monthly order being stacked up, ready to put in, and it just sits there waiting for things to be added. But then they can also have another shopping list where the urgent stuff is immediately transacted and put through. So they've got all this parallel activity, which just is that concept just doesn't exist in B2C e-commerce. So there's a couple of examples.
No, that's great. Thank you. I do understand it, and I kind of probably wouldn't have been able to put it into words, but I kind of understand it. It's the complexity of the process. It's not a ready-made product with a fixed price. It's a hell of a lot more complicated than that. It depends on each and every business deal. Every business deal could be different. Every price could be different theoretically. But yeah, so that's one thing. And the other thing I wanted to, well, just a quick question. RFQ, I don't know if I missed it, but what does that stand for? RFQ?
Request for quote, usually.
Okay, all right, okay. Thanks. The other question I had is I wanted to know if there were particular areas or business sectors from which people or your customers are coming from. I know you gave a couple of examples and they seem a few examples and they seem quite diverse, but I was wondering if you know of kind of particular sectors that are particularly interested in your product, your platform.
Yeah, not really. It's very difficult to answer that because we basically provide a solution for people who are in manufacturing or distribution. So within that, obviously, you could be creating pretty much anything, and we'd have something that made sense for you. So the customer slide that I brought up was pretty diverse. We've got, I would say, lots of people in kind of food and medical supplies, lots of engineering and components manufacturers, and kind of parts accessories distributors. It's quite a range. There's no particular hotspots necessarily of particular industry sectors. It's more the fact that if you manufacture or distribute something and you need to sell that online, or you want to kind of build an online proposition that supports or perhaps replaces a construct where you have people on the phone selling, people out in the field, people out on the road driving to see people, that's usually where the space is that we see people coming to us from.
Right. And it's interesting that you say about supports or replaces the traditional method of doing business, if you like. I'm a little bit out of touch in some ways and some things. I know it sounds a bit ironic because I do run a technology website, but I keep thinking that manufacturers will gradually directly sell to consumers, and the process of setting up websites and doing business online and digitalization is all kind of newish to them. I don't think it probably is. Probably most of them. I don't know, but you can correct me if I'm wrong in that respect. Are these manufacturers and logistics businesses that you're accepting or welcoming as customers? Is this for some of them? Is this whole e-commerce thing new, where they are looking to maybe add the digital dimension or replace some traditional things? What can you say about those kind of trends and overviews?
Yeah, I think there's probably three trends that we see. One is that people have got an awareness of e-commerce to some extent already, and it supplements their field sales approach. And they have perhaps a system that's been in place for many years and it's been organically constructed. That kind of company is usually grown to quite a size through a mix of different sales channels and a mix of operations. And they need something that is much more scalable and instantly provides a platform that they can kind of embed quickly and go on and run with and take their business to the next level. So we see that as a trend. So people who've already got e-commerce, but it's legacy and it doesn't really hit their requirements anymore. We're definitely seeing what I would consider to be digital transformations, where companies that have traditionally sold offline, i.e. by filling in an order pad and going to see a customer and then kind of taking a phone order or whatever, that whole manual process with no nothing online beyond a kind of a website that tells the story of who they are and what they do. We're seeing a lot of people come now to try and build an e-commerce proposition from the ground up. And I think that the pandemic that we've recently experienced, well, this whole year, that accelerated people's plans in that respect. So I think that trend is a difficult one to, establish how rational it is at the moment. Is that going to continue? Has it simply accelerated it and it's a spike, or are we going to see more and more people realizing that's what they need to invest in? My feeling is it's the latter. So I think people are now realizing that the methodology of selling digitally is accessible, and the investment is high, but it's definitely not overwhelming. If you're a kind of 10 million plus pound business, to buy into an enterprise e-commerce product is not an investment that is going to be particularly scary. It'll be considered, but it's not going to be overwhelmingly scary. And then I think the third trend that we're seeing is where people have invested in e-commerce in big name platforms, in the Adobe infrastructure, or perhaps in something like WordPress and WooCommerce or Shopify, or there's lots of platforms out there, but perhaps they've got a really good awareness of it, and they've kind of built something that has worked for them, and they're almost in the same position as the people with a legacy system, where they've got a good platform, but it's not good for B2B. And that's really, again, where we're seeing people come to us, and they're realizing that not only do they need to scale, they need to be able to leverage their e-commerce platform in different ways. And that's where we come in. That's where we see that. There's one interesting thing. I'll pop it on the chat for you in case you want to bring it up on your website, and I'll make you the host again. But basically, a lot of people are coming, and they are wanting to sell both to businesses and to consumers through the same platform. And actually, that's a challenge that not many platforms have addressed. So there's a customer of ours called Saltworks, who are very much a kind of wholesaler. They're a B2B company at heart. They're selling to restaurants, they're selling to other manufacturers, they're selling to who embed their salt in their products, they're selling to high profile gourmet retailers, salt mill manufacturers. But clearly that kind of product also has an appeal to consumers. So they've built a site on Oro Commerce that not only caters for their business to business environment, but it also presents a really up-to-date and kind of beautiful front end for consumers to understand. And sometimes they're quite different. Sometimes they're not leveraging that way. Now, clearly, a salt manufacturer has a product that they can sell both to other businesses and to consumers. I think the reality is that we see a lot of businesses who simply would never be able to sell their components to consumers. So while I recognize what you said, the trend of people wanting to sell directly to consumers will continue and will emerge even stronger and stronger, there will always be verticals who cannot do that. So I think robotics production for factories is one. There's not going to be consumer demand for that. People who sell medical equipment to hospitals, people who sell lab equipment to labs, chemical supplies, things like that. There are going to be a huge number of manufacturers and distributors who simply don't have a catalogue that makes sense for consumers. And this is where a B2B e-commerce platform is kind of critical for those companies.
Right. And if I could take you back to your presentation, at one point, I think you said 25%. Maybe the figure is wrong, but it was a significant increase in sales, I think. And I'm sure you got one or two other success stories like that. And you said so yourself, it's quite typical of that kind of rate of success is quite typical. What do you put that down to? Is it more efficiency achieved as a result of using an integrated or a software that or a platform that can integrate several departments and maybe eliminate some unnecessary work, or is it something else? What do you put the increase in maybe sales or productivity to down to?
I mean, efficiency is definitely a critical component in that journey. So if you're able to list, sell, and transact your products more efficiently on your site to your customers, then chances are you're going to convert more of the people that are hitting your site. So you're naturally going to lift sales. One of the there's so many answers to that question. So if somebody has not been selling online and they start selling online using Oro, clearly they've opened up an entirely new sales channel. So in that context, it's often quite significant to see uplift very quickly. The capacity for getting up and running quickly with Oro Commerce is very very rapid compared to a lot of e-commerce platform deployments. So, when we talk about things like total cost of ownership and speed of deployment, those are things that contribute not only to selling more stuff, but also to making the best of the investment from a return standpoint and from ensuring that you're not cutting your bottom line. And all of those contributing factors will help a company be more robust and grow faster. So yeah, we generally see an uplift because of efficiency benefits and because of being able to simply sell more product, because you're able to show it to more customers, show it to more potential customers. You are enabling them to transact more at each time, more conveniently for them. You can, with e-commerce, you can provide methodologies to encourage loyalty, encourage repeat purchase, encourage cross-sell and upsell on site, so you can get a better average order value, a better basket value, by making it easy for people to repeat order by uploading a CSV file, a spreadsheet of what they want to order, or by simply going in and say, okay, I ordered those before, I want to quick order all of those again. All these points of convenience for your end user, your customer, are contributing to you being able to sell more online. So efficiency is a kind of like a strongly important factor in that, but it's also convenience for the customer, which allows them to transact more.
Right. And finally, what do you think the future holds for you and this kind of technology platform? Do you think there's going to be more companies? Is there any more left? Or does everybody use e-commerce platforms or some kind? Are they going to go for a switch from using maybe inappropriate platforms, B2C ones, and move more into specialist B2B platforms? What can you say about some of the changes or developments that might occur over the next few years in this sector, in the e-commerce digital sort of sector?
Yeah, okay. So I think there's two kind of elements to that. One is, you've touched on it. I think more businesses will realize that an e-commerce platform, all e-commerce platforms are not the same. I think more businesses will start to realize that, and they'll realize either that when they're putting a new platform, their due diligence on which platform they should choose will lead them to looking at platforms that are designed for businesses rather than for business to consumer propositions. And I think that they will also critically analyze the feature sets that they've got on any incumbent platforms and start to understand that they need a different set of requirements to sell to other businesses. So I think that that's one thing that perhaps in the past businesses have thought, all right, I'll just use that platform. I've heard of that. I'll go and use that, and we'll manage. I think that mindset is changing strongly, and that will continue to change. And the mindset will be, what do we actually need for our business? How are we going to scale our business? Let's look at our needs and then translate that into a scope that allows us to choose the most appropriate e-commerce platform. So I think that's one thing. For us, when we look at how we're going to develop, we operate in agile methodology. So that means that we basically don't commit to a huge project that's all pre-planned, and we're committed to it entirely, and we've got no flexibility in that. So what we look at is, what does the market need? What do our customers need? Are 25% of our customers all feeding back that they need the same feature to be developed? If that's the case, then we can respond to that. And we kind of build a roadmap of functionality, and we look at a long-term and mid-term, and we say, okay, well, we want to build more workflows that are embedded, or we want to make sure that we can cater for different shipping integrators, basic stuff like that, where it's a clear functionality and it will benefit a number of customers. We also look at more esoteric things, like, so should we be embedding things like customer messaging, where you've got live chat that's super prevalent on business to consumer sites? Should that be a thing that's on business to business sites? Probably, and it already is, and you can already put it in. But do we need to make it native? Things like that. So we look at the market trends, and we look at what's happening, and we look at what might need to be embedded and what makes sense for business customers. Do we manage contracts better? Do we give routing options for fulfilling orders from multiple warehouses? These are solutions that businesses would look for that a business to consumer platform just won't be considering. So really, that's where we look at it. We look at a market and development roadmap, and we look at what customers want, and we look at what businesses are adapting towards.
Okay, well, thank you very much indeed, Chris. If there's anything you'd like to add that I didn't ask about, please do feel free.
I think we've covered everything. I would say, if anybody wants more information, I realise we've touched on a lot of different things, a lot of different concepts, and some of it might be completely new, some of it might be completely alien to your audience. So if anybody wants any more detail on any of it, or if they want some objective advice on what they're doing or what they should do, I'd be happy to sort of layer that in.
Okay, thank you very much for your time.
Send us an email at sales@roboticsandautomationnews.com to register for one of our many upcoming webinars. And if you'd like us to host your webinar, we have a range of options, including long-term lead generation packages and marketing campaigns. We look forward to hearing from you soon.